In today's video, we have all the latest updates on pending free agents Artemi Panarin, Sergei Bobrovsky, and Erik Karlsson, and plus we also have some trade rumors to discuss regarding the Boston Bruins, Edmonton Oilers, and Vancouver Canucks. We'll get into all the latest coming up next. Welcome back to Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams, so if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. So we've already had a very busy day here in the NHL. We saw a signing and a trade both take place earlier this morning. If you missed any of that news, I have videos that I'll link up here in the YouTube cards. You can certainly go check those out. But we've already had a trade between the Caps and the Flyers, and Jordan Eberle has re-signed with the New York Islanders. So the action is starting to heat up around the NHL. Of course, the season is completely over now. Of course, we're 1 week away from the NHL draft. The NHL awards are not far away. There's all kinds of stuff here happening, as well as, of course, the big one being free agency here as well. The interview period kicks off on June the 23rd. So lots of news going to be coming around, all kinds of speculation in the coming days. So stay tuned to Top Shelf Hockey to keep yourself fully up to date. Now, I want to get started here today by talking about the dynamic duo of free agents with the Columbus Blue Jackets, Artemi Panarin and Sergei Bobrovsky. As of right now, there was some belief before that there very well could be a sign-and trade between the Blue Jackets and another team, most notably the Florida Panthers, in an effort for Columbus to give them the 8-year terms on the contracts and also allow them to receive some kind of compensation in return, since they're more likely losing two of their top players here. I mean, it's been known for some time that Bobrovsky and Panarin more than likely were not returning to Columbus. Of course, we already saw reports about Bobrovsky's home being for sale there. So it does seem like it's very, very likely that they are going to depart via free agency, and I can understand why the Jackets very well might go down the sign and trade road. But as of right now, there's no belief that the Blue Jackets have granted them consent to kind of work out a contract with any other teams. Obviously, for the sign and trade to happen, the Blue Jackets would have to allow them to negotiate openly with other teams right now while they're waiting for this to take place before the free agents, and then work out a trade after. If they did do that, the compensation going back likely would not be very significant. We're probably talking about a couple of draft picks or something fairly minor, but still something is better than nothing, I suppose. But it looks as though the Florida Panthers were not too keen on giving up any compensation in order to land the signing rights to these players or to do a sign and trade. So more than likely, they go to free agency, and the Florida Panthers are still the most likely heavily rumored team here to land their services. One of the other teams that were kind of mentioned in rumors before that could be interested in was the Islanders. And the Jordan Eberle signing today, to me, kind of signifies that they're not likely going to have a lot of cap space left over if they sign Anders Lee and Robin Lehner. So I'm not sure that the Islanders are going to be too active in free agency outside of looking after their own guys and maybe adding something smaller, but they're certainly not going to have the space to do these two big names if they sign Lee and Leonard. Now, of course, they haven't been signed yet, so I can't completely rule that out. I just don't get the feeling that the Islanders are really a team in the mix. I think the Florida Panthers are still the most likely landing spot for both these players. They have a lot of space available in the salary cap space right now, and they're expected to maybe even make a little bit more here and possibly trade out at least one more player, possibly like a Mike Hoffman or something, to land these guys. But as of right now, I would not expect a sign and trade on Bobrovsky or Panarin. Doesn't look like that's going to be in the works here, so I fully suspect them to start talking to teams when the interview period lines up here on the 23rd, and more than likely landing with the Panthers. But I guess we'll wait to see a little bit later to confirm that or not. But that's the latest on those guys. Now jumping over to talk about another big name free agent, star defenseman Erik Karlsson, who's been rumored for the most part here to be returning to the Eastern Conference, and that might not happen according to some new reports coming out here through The Athletic. Basically, the reports before indicated that Karlsson's wife was homesick, wanted to be closer to Ottawa. There was even an article in an Ottawa newspaper speculating a return to Ottawa, which I think is highly doubtful, but I guess crazier things potentially have happened here. There was talk about Ottawa and Montreal, and that Karlsson wanted to have, hopefully very competitive offers from those teams to make an Eastern Conference return. We've heard about the Tampa Bay Lightning being a pretty likely landing spot as well, so we could play with his good friend Victor Hedman, although they would have to do some juggling moving some guys around to create the space to make it happen. But either way, it's something that both sides appeared to be interested in, at least from the past history. But either way, right now, it looks as though the San Jose Sharks are preparing to make Erik Karlsson a significant offer to stay. The report through The Athletic here indicates, and I'll have an excerpt here on the screen, that they're prepared to offer him an 8-year contract with Drew Doughty money, giving him $11 million, which is an $88 million total contract over an 8-year span. And personally, I just don't see Erik Karlsson getting that type of offer from an Eastern Conference team like the other reports were indicating that he was hoping for. I certainly don't see the Senators going down that road. I definitely don't see the Montreal Canadiens going down that road. Tampa, I just don't see how Tampa could do that myself. Now, there was talk if he went to Tampa that he would take less money due to the income tax differences in the state of Florida, that he'd be willing to accept less because he wouldn't be paying out the taxes like he would in other states or in Canada. So obviously that could possibly, change things there a little bit. But for the San Jose Sharks to offer Erik Karlsson an $88 million 8-year contract would be extremely significant, and it's really hard to imagine him not accepting that. But I guess at the same time, if for personal reasons it doesn't work out and they really want to go east, then maybe that won't actually be accepted. But as we know, Karlsson recently had surgery for the groin injury that was nagging him near the end of the year. He's hung around in the area down there. He's been spotted at some of the Golden State Warrior home games against the Toronto Raptors here in the finals. So it's not really clear right now exactly where things are kind of more likely to go, what direction here. Obviously, he's still rehabbing an injury. I'm sure he'll make it back home to Ottawa probably at some point over the summer, but exactly when and what his plans are going to be, it's really kind of up in the air. But the other big implications here for the San Jose Sharks is if they keep Erik Karlsson, what does that mean for their overall team? That's a pretty significant contract. He'd be by far the highest paid player on the team. What does that mean for Captain Joe Pavelski, for longtime veteran Joe Thornton? That's not going to leave a ton of cap space. They also have Timo Meier and Kevin Labanc are pending restricted free agents and need new deals. I know Doug Wilson's been able to get a lot of pretty good second contracts done with players coming out of their ELCs for pretty good prices on reasonably short-term deals before they go long-term. But, that's going to tie up a lot of space for another 8 years. It's just a pretty significant move to make. I just don't know how they could be able to retain the other players, and I don't see them not wanting to bring back Pavelski or trading out a Meier or Labanc. Unlikely, you would think, but anyways, it just creates a whole lot more questions than answers, in my opinion. And if the Sharks do put this offer on the table, like it's being rumored here, then I fully suspect the odds just likely increase substantially that he doesn't head back east and that he stays in San Jose. But I guess, like I said, he and his wife will have to think that over, and we'll see what happens. But that is the latest on Erik Karlsson. Jumping over to some updates here on some trade rumors that we've discussed here recently. Obviously, we've heard a lot about Nikita Zaitsev and the fact that the Maple Leafs want to move him, and the fact that he requested a trade. So likely him leaving Toronto is very likely this summer if they can find the right deal for him. Of course, we had heard the Canucks and Oilers both being interested, and we've seen some local reporters kind of jumping in here on the updates on what's going on there. So a lot of the Zaitsev talk that we've been kind of relying on, a lot of that's been coming from Darren Dreger, and it's just starting to question based on the local reporters' angles on how much of that might not be actually be the case here. Like, for example, David Staples of the Edmonton Journal said basically, why would the Edmonton Oilers want Nikita Zaitsev? And, he is right. It really doesn't make a lot of sense, and it seemed like any player with bad contracts coming up are suddenly being linked to the Oilers. It's kind of weird. Like Corey Perry was mentioned about being bought out or traded out of Anaheim. Suddenly, TSN reporters were linking him to the Oilers, that they might be interested. You get Zaitsev. Of course, there's a potential swap with Lucic and Eriksson. And it just seems weird how the Oilers are kind of being lumped into a lot of these bad contract talks when a lot of it doesn't make sense. Now, I would argue that perhaps a Lucic for Eriksson trade does have some sense to it. I'm not completely in disagreement for that one, but most of the other ones, Corey Perry, maybe if they could get him on a 1 year, $1 million contract or something real cheap, perhaps, I guess. But anyway, so David Staples of the Edmonton Journal really doesn't feel that the Oilers are really all that interested in Zaitsev. And according to Canucks reporter Rick Dhaliwal, he said that the Canucks and Oilers, from what he knows, that they've had shown interest, they've kicked tires, but there's been no official offers on the table. They have not gotten that far with negotiations, but he does believe Jim Benning certainly does have interest in Zaitsev, but of all the things on his list of priorities this summer for Benning to deal with here, especially in the shorter term, he feels like Zaitsev would be, probably number 4 or 5 down the list. There's certainly some other things here, like getting Brock Besser signed. Obviously, they need to be prepared for the draft coming up next Friday. And there's other things that are just a little bit more important right now, but he could possibly see him, maybe showing a little bit more interest here over the shorter term, maybe in a few weeks' time. But either way, I'm not sure where Zaitsev's going. A lot of the local reporters are indicating that the trade talks are not nearly as progressed as some of the other national reporters were kind of leading us to believe previously. Lastly here, I want to look at the Boston Bruins and the possibility of some moves that they might make this summer. Of course, we know that they just came off a devastating Game 7 Stanley Cup final loss here to the St. Louis Blues, and there's going to be a quick turnaround with the fact that they got to get ready for the draft. Free agency's coming up. They have a lot of these guys that need to, either have new deals or look at next year as well. So Don Sweeney's going to be a busy man coming up here. He's going to move on from the loss quickly and decide what direction they're going. And one player that's been talked about a long time ago in trade rumors has been quiet for the big part of this year, and now it's starting to resurface due to some salary cap implications, would be defenseman Torey Krug. Now, Torey Krug has 1 year left on his contract. That's a lot for a lot of players. The time that we start hearing potential rumors, they either get extended or traded, usually while they still have some value left. Torey Krug's a great skater, good puck mover, generates some offense. He's not a huge guy, but he's certainly not afraid, to play a physical style of game either. So I do think there'd be a lot of interest in Krug should he hit the market. So it's likely looking at he's going to be somewhere between $6.5 and $7.5 million would be my best guesstimate on where his new contract lands, based on other offensively gifted defensemen that are somewhat comparable to him. I think that's a fair number. So that might be too rich for the Boston Bruins blood here with their salary cap situation. It'll link him up longer term. I mean, they do have some other younger defensemen that are proven to be really solid in big parts of the future, like Brandon Carlo and Charlie McAvoy. Even Matt Grzelcyk's been pretty solid as well. They still have Chira around for one more year. So there's a lot of questions to be answered. I know, like I said, they're fresh off a finals loss here in Game 7. Devastating. I know how hurt the players were that they couldn't capture the Stanley Cup. But obviously, moves need to be made. Salary cap implications are usually a big part of this. And Torey Krug's name is out there as a player we might see the Bruins move this offseason. And if they do move Torey Krug, I would imagine they're more than likely going to have to take something that's a little bit less significant when it comes to the cap. So probably a younger player in return would probably be preferable here. Hard to say exactly what the return would be, but his name is out there in the rumor mill. And there is some talk as well that they might consider buying out veteran forward David Backes. Looking at the buyout calculator, it might prove to be a little bit too expensive right now. So the upcoming year, there'll be minimal savings, but there's going to be big savings next year. Then we'd have 2 years added on here with a fairly low cap hit. So considering Backes was a healthy scratch throughout, a big chunk of the playoffs, it seems kind of falling out of favor. He's getting older, not quite, the player he used to be. It would not be shocking to see when the buyout window opens up here shortly that he is one of the candidates that could very well find themselves as an unrestricted free agent looking for a new home. So that is all the updates we have for the NHL trade rumors, as well as all the free agent talk going around right now. Like I said, I expect it to be a very busy next week or so as we approach the NHL draft. There's going to be all kinds of speculation. We probably will see some more minor deals like we've seen. We could have some more signings as well. So stay tuned to Top Shelf Hockey for all your latest news updates. We'll be posting videos here daily, multiple times per day, keeping you all up to date. Thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you next time.